Welcome, welcome from around the world. We're going to give it about a minute as folks file in, but we are glad you are here. If you intended to be in a Ask Me Anything fireside chat with Brandon and Keith on the topic of leading AI transformation, you're in the right place. And we're going to get started before you know it. We had a meaningful amount of demand for this topic and have sourced pretty much everything we're going to talk about today from pre-submitted questions and questions from similar forums over the past couple of months. And what you'll find, I hope, today is a genuine Ask Me Anything. So Keith and I will warm this thing up with some kind of hot topics related to AI transformation, particularly AI fluency. And then before you know it, we'll be in Q&A. And so again, welcome, welcome. We have folks RSVP'd again from almost every time zone on the planet. We are glad you are here. A couple of things. We're using a platform called Livestorm today. If you're having any issues with it whatsoever and aren't using Google Chrome as your browser, try switching to that. Tends to work best on Chrome. If you're curious about whether we're recording and we'll share today's Ask Me Anything, the answer is yes, we certainly will. And you're welcome to share that with peers, folks who couldn't make it, folks in your own workplace. And last but not least, we are going to do plenty of questions right here from folks joining live today. And for that, you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen a button called Questions. That's the place to post questions. And the best part is you don't need to wait till the end to post questions, because you can post them at any time as we talk, and you can upvote one another's questions as well. And what we'll typically do is we'll cover questions at the end in the order in which they are most upvoted. But again, as folks file in, we have almost 150 and counting. Zapier, PandaDoc co-hosting a Ask Me Anything on leading AI transformation with a special focus on AI fluency. We mentioned that Keith and I are hosting this thing today, and so let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then we will jam. This is going to look and sound a little bit like a live podcast, but one that's informed by pre-submitted questions from you and plenty of live questions at the end. So Keith, welcome. It's fun to host this with you together.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talking about a topic I know we're both really passionate about.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's keep the mic in your hands. Tell folks a little bit about you, about the work you do at PandaDoc, and particularly the work that you do as part of the leadership team at PandaDoc on the topic of AI transformation.
Yeah, so I'm the president of PandaDoc. I've been at PandaDoc for about 3 years. If you're not familiar with PandaDoc, we are an agreement workflow platform. We really focus on that workflow element. I think that's something we will talk a little bit about today in terms of AI and how it can come to bear, but really important in the lives of customers to make sure they get their agreements completed on time, quickly, with as much ease as possible. And before this, I spent 10 years at Google and 3 years at Adobe. On the leadership team here at PandaDoc, we talk about AI all the time. We really got serious about it a year and a half ago. And we've been slowly weaving it into our competencies and thinking about how we get a more AI fluent workforce and roll it into almost everything we do here.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep things spicy throughout. So I got one for you. Building on this notion of AI fluency, Keith, what is one myth that you see with companies when trying to adopt AI that you're hoping you and I can myth bust in our conversation today?
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I think a lot of times people get discouraged when they're thinking about how AI ready they are or need to be. And especially in technology, you see so many people who are posting on social media saying they are complete expert, they're using agents every day, they're building agents from scratch. And I think there's this myth that you have to be like a true, best in class expert right now. And what I would say is it's all about getting started, and it's about making progress and learning as you go. We're still in, sorry to use a US analogy, but the first inning of the baseball game. And it's so early, you just got to start making progress and getting your hands dirty. I wouldn't expect that the entire workforce everywhere is going to be a level 5 expert in AI right now. But I don't know, how do you see it for you guys?
That's a good question. I mean, I tend to agree. If there are genuine AI experts out there, I haven't met any yet. And honestly, the folks I tend to listen to the most are the folks who are quick to share what they're puzzling through. and what they don't know yet. Because that way we all learn a lot more faster. So that's where I tend to, those are the folks I tend to like to hang out with. And by way of introductions to y'all, it's good to see you. I'm Brandon Sammut, I'm Chief People and AI Transformation Officer at Zapier. Zapier it's effectively a builder platform. It's a place where you can build anything from automations through AI agents without having to code. It's a way to give anyone in an organization access to some of the builder superpowers that Keith and I are going to jam on today. And practically for me personally, um, it's been pretty transformative in my own AI fluency journey. It's one of the reasons why I came to Zapier 4.5 years ago. The first half of my career, Keith, you may not know this, was in education. It wasn't in software. And I've always been really interested in like, how do we maximize human potential? How do we better connect that potential to opportunity? And I got into software because I started seeing like 10, 12 years ago, ways that technology could really help folks, be the very best at the thing they're trying to be great at in the world. And with AI in particular, and what I've seen through my own use of things like Zapier is, okay, like it doesn't matter whether you are a recruiter, a salesperson, a marketer. You can be about as far from a software developer in your organization as you can imagine. In these days, especially, you can reshape and have agency and control over the future of the work you do in a way that I wouldn't have dreamed of even 4 years ago. So that's part of what I find really motivating about what we're going to talk about today.
Well, it does seem like hopefully AI can help fulfill that mission of helping us reach our potential as well. So you're almost connecting that education history with what you're doing today, which is really cool.
Yeah, it does feel like a full circle moment, honestly. Um, Keith, AI fluency. That's in the header for our conversation today. And I imagine a reason why a lot of folks have joined us from all over the world. What does AI fluency mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what I was saying earlier, we don't really have true experts in it yet, but we can see different levels of expertise. And so what we've done at PandaDoc is try to take different roles and outline where we can see those roles going with AI and what we expect from them in different phases. You could sort of call it like the beginner phase, the intermediate phase, advanced. I'm not going to call it expert. And then just try to guide what our teams are doing here based on what we know today. And I think you sort of start with things that are relatively easy on like an AI maturity curve, which is just making your work a little bit better, checking your work using an LLM and asking it questions. And then as you hop up the maturity curve, you start seeing different things. Like you start using it for workflow, you start using markdown language. And then as you get even more advanced, you might start coding with AI. And that's different for every role. But I think what we try to do is make sure that we're carving out those pathways for each role to make each role successful, which in essence will make the company more successful. And so that's kind of how we've been thinking about fluency, is not that you reach this expertise stage, but that you like sort of move up the maturity curve over time. You get more comfortable using it in your role, and it sort of builds your skill set. So you can think you've got these skills that you were born with, you've got these skills you've developed over your career, and now you're adding this other set of skills that is amplified by AI. And those skills, you should not expect you're going to have like 20 new skills at once, but you start with like one or two, and then you start growing that over time.
That makes a ton of sense. I'll share something that I think is somewhat provocative in like the broader conversation on AI fluency, but that we believe really strongly at Zapier. And it's this: it's that AI fluency is a whole lot more than like prompting skills or some of the like the very tangible like how to use AI. Like, it's obviously very important, but I think equally important, when you're using any technology, are things like the understanding of the underlying work or what excellence looks like, such that you actually can tell the difference between something you should redesign with AI and something that maybe isn't worth the effort or isn't going to have impact. So there's a little bit of like judgment involved there. So it's kind of a little bit of honestly like what's old is new again in that sense. And what we're seeing is that you know people, teams, or organizations that were anything short of great at some of these like classic like judgment craft type of capabilities also have a harder time scaling overall AI fluency because again, like AI is a technology you can point at just about anything. But the question is, what is it worth pointing at in the first place?
I think that's a great point. One of the things I always say about talent, and maybe this will appeal to your head of HR side quite a bit, but you have these intrinsic traits that I think make certain people more successful than others. Things like curiosity or grit and tenacity. And asking the right question is just as important at being AI fluent as like knowing how to prompt the model. To your point, like, should I use this to streamline a certain workflow? It may not be worth the time, even if it's relatively easy to do it in the LLM. You've got to have the curiosity to ask the questions and to like really think through whether something is worth doing.
Yeah. AI fluency. Do you assess it when you're hiring folks into PandaDoc? Why or why not?
We have started to. I would say we made a conscious switch in the last 6 months to put in AI fluency into our rubric. And we're not looking for expertise, but we're looking for that natural curiosity and some use of AI to improve how they do their job. Because I think if you're showing that curiosity, you will get up that AI maturity curve over time, and we'll help you do it at PandaDoc. Like, not only in hiring, but we've started to weave it into our talent evaluation and our coaching process. And so I think if we can show that you have that inclination, that natural curiosity, we'll help you get there. But I don't expect everybody to come in as a complete expert, and I don't think anybody's totally fluent, but we expect some level of comfort with AI. Maybe I would say comfort instead of fluency.
100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you know a little bit of Zapier's journey here so far this year. So we started assessing for AI fluency in the spring of this year. Well, Northern Hemisphere spring, March, April, for 100% of applicants and 100% of jobs that we hire into the company. And one of the things that actually together we can share for everyone who RSVP'd for today is Zapier open sourced its AI fluency framework. It's effectively the framework we use to assess candidates, and we don't want that to be a secret. We want folks to know exactly what it's all about, and so that's available. We'll include that in the kind of the show notes from our conversation today. And like you were saying, Keith, the kind of more like technical, like how we use AI skills, probably just half of the stuff on that AI fluency framework. The other half are some of the things that you were just speaking to, which is, do I know how to ask a really great question? Do I understand what's most important in our organization right now? Do I understand the range of stakeholders that the work I do influence? Whether that's customers, students, end users, peers, whatever the case may be. Do I have a good handle on just thoughtful experimentation? Can I apply intellectual rigor to those experiments? Am I going to be as fast to call a thing that didn't work out as I am to race and show everyone like the thing that did? It's really important at this stage, to your point, where if there are leaders today on any of this stuff, they probably won't be the leaders tomorrow, or at least we can't take any of that for granted. And so pace of learning, I think, is really the ingredient here. I think that's true for companies, but like you were sharing with us earlier, I think that's also true just on the individual AI fluency level.
Yeah, you guys did a great job with that. We absolutely consulted it as we were thinking about what we were going to build unique to our culture. But I think it's a fantastic framework, and I completely agree with the experimentation. We're so early here. We don't know what's going to work. You have to be willing to try things. You've got to be willing to fail and be okay with that failure. Bounce back and then try something new. If you're going to get discouraged by setbacks with AI use, you're going to have a hard time because it's just evolving so rapidly.
Yeah. Let's pivot into this notion of AI as a tool, not an outcome. How do we in our teams actually decide like what to prioritize with AI in the first place? And so first question is, generally speaking, at PandaDoc, like to what degree is AI helping teams focus, versus causing, I don't know, shiny object syndrome?
I would say when we first started this journey, a year and a half ago, we definitely got some comments like, "Hey, you guys are chasing shiny objects." But I think over time, we took a mix of let a thousand flowers bloom philosophy and a little bit of a top-down direction from our C team on where we thought AI could drive the most benefit. So the top-down guidance was around efficiency, particularly around, our customer-facing teams and how we could use it there, particularly for our engineers and how they would code. And then we sort of created a little bit of a budget for a bottoms up and let anyone experiment with a set of tools that we started off that we thought were a good set of tools. And what we quickly saw was a insatiable demand for all sorts of tools. And so we tried to find ways that we could let people do small experiments and then let the winners of those experiments kind of go broader in the company. And that's worked really well. I mean, there are things we had no idea that even existed like a year ago that have become staples in our company and really important for driving efficiency. Obviously there's note-taking tools, there's enterprise search tools that have been really helpful, but you never know which are the ones that are going to be successful. And some of the ones that we mandated for top-down were complete failures. We scrapped them. Somebody lower in the organization had a better idea. We took that idea, ran with it, and now that's part of how we do business, particularly for our customer-facing teams. I would say the top-down in general worked fairly well on the engineering side for coding. We had a pretty good idea what was going to work there. But it's been fun to see the experimentation thrive and generate new ideas that we had never seen. We've vibe coded apps. We've vibe coded certain advanced functionality on our webpage. We've stitched together workflows. And it's really cool to see how it's working across almost every function: finance, HR, sales, customer support, engineering, product management. And, I'm really happy with it. And I think like a couple people have asked me in the past, like, are you okay with the cost of these tools? Like, you're having all these new costs. But I think it's almost like the flip side. What's the cost of not letting this happen, which is a stagnation of innovation and lowered efficiency. So we're really happy with how it's evolved.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to repeat back the last thing you said because I think it's a really useful takeaway from today's conversation. So again, very common, understandable human question. How do we get comfortable with what all of this costs? And this, I think a lot of times when folks are asking about that, is all the new tools, right? In some cases, like in Zapier today, like we'll sometimes let 2, 3, or even 4 tools persist that are all getting after the same general use case. Could be like a note-taking, AI note-taking app, or some tools we use for recruiting or whatever, marketing, AI marketing tools or what have you. And I think the way you flipped that question on its head is really useful for the moment that we're in, which is like, yes, of course, we want to be accountable to the direct costs of all of this tooling. We have to know how much we're spending. But maybe the more important question, big picture or long term, is, well, what would the opportunity cost be of not experimenting at the rate that we are experimenting with? And I think for a lot of organizations, it probably is like the better question. Speaking of questions, I got a couple more here. And then I think the questions that are coming in are so good. I have been paying attention, y'all. Keep the questions coming. I think we're going to flip the ratio of like you and me jamming on some of the pre-submitteds to answering to the stuff that's coming in live, because there are some great ones in there. But I have a couple more that'll tee up a lot of what folks are posting right now. One of them, okay, well, let me share another belief of mine, and you can make it better or disagree. So, on this topic of focus and like, what are we supposed to be using AI for in the company? The maybe like simple but strong conviction that I have is that it should be the same stuff that the company cared about yesterday, right? It's like, what are we trying to be great at in the world? Who are we trying to serve? What is our company's mission? How do we think we're going to realize the mission measurably? How do we know if we're making real progress towards that mission? And what I notice when I'm talking with a lot of organizations these days is that the organizations that already had a really strong handle on the answers to those questions, that's the same answer for like, where might AI help? Right now, will AI and automation be transformationally beneficial in all of those kind of existential areas for the company immediately? Well, not necessarily, but at least in terms of like, where should we get curious? Where should we be experimenting? Companies with that strong, just like mission, vision, strategic, and goals clarity kind of already have the working answers to where we ought to experiment. And I don't know if you think that's an oversimplification.
No, I agree with you completely. I would add one nuance to it. But first, the agreement part, which is generally I think about what is the purpose of a business, and your job is to fulfill the mission of the company. Your job is to help your employees, help your customers, and then ultimately the returns come back to your shareholders and you reinvest in the business. The one twist I would say is that AI allows us to do things we never thought were possible with our business before. And so while I agree with you that it doesn't change what we should work on, I would say we should unshackle our chains of creativity to think bigger than we have been able to do before. And that's the only twist I would say. But in general, I agree with you that this is about doing the same things that make our business, Zapier or PandaDoc, a great business. But now, how do we think even bigger about what is possible with these businesses?
Yeah. Oh, that resonates. Okay, let's pull on that a little bit further. At PandaDoc, and I'll share a couple from Zapier. Like, what are some of those emerging? Like, wow, didn't realize. Like, we've been asking this, like, wouldn't it be nice if question, and now it looks like we can actually make it real.
Yeah, so generally we think about how we can help small businesses. That is our target customer. Small businesses get their agreements completed. And in the past, a lot of agreements require a legal review. We're thinking about how we make that easier for small businesses. And I'm not talking about just using red lines. I'm talking about getting foundational advice for your business that you may not have been able to afford before, or to get insights into how agreements are being completed, almost like a playbook of what we know about your contracts for you and your company, and how we can help you be smarter about what you're signing, the risk you take on, and the business outcomes. That wasn't really possible before AI was around. And then again, from a cultural value perspective, we have 4 values. We call them our life values. It's learning, impact, fun, and empathy. And impact is a really important one. But you always had things you had to do that took up time and maybe pulled you away from having the maximum impact. And so now we can use AI to reduce the burden of those smaller things so we can disproportionately focus on the things that drive impact. And so one side, helping businesses, helping our customers, and then the other side, helping our employees focus and do more that really matters to them and lives into what they care about.
Yeah, right on. Okay, here's what you made me think. What's going on at Zapier that's kind of surprising us in terms of what's possible? I'll give you two small but meaningful examples, and then one bigger one to kind of match what you just put on the table. So two small but meaningful ones. On the recruiting team at Zapier, something we have always wanted to have time for, but classically you just never do, is being able to give candidates, especially in the later stages, the ones who invested a lot of time getting to know the company, but who we don't ultimately hire for that particular job at the time, just a bunch of personalized, like live feedback, like strengths, like here are some things, et cetera. It takes a lot of time. The team had a lot of conviction though they wanted to be able to ultimately do that, and with some of the ways they've updated the way that we do recruiting, more automation and AI in there, it's freed up just enough like elbow room, as it were, to actually be able to do this for the first time. And not only do we think it's like the right thing to do, but it's a distinct advantage. There's so few, vanishingly few companies that are able to do this for a variety of reasons that our conviction is it really stands out. It's a great match for Zapier's culture. One of our values, is growth through feedback. How can we reflect that even when you're getting to know the company, applying for your first job at Zapier? So that's one example. Another one on customer support. As the support team's been using more automation and AI to respond to tickets faster, we've unlocked some surplus capacity on the team, and we're reinvesting that in now a customer support person at Zapier is much more actively involved in cross-selling, upselling, lead qualification, and so on, like really helping customers think beyond the problem they wrote the original ticket for to how can they be getting even more value out of Zapier in the first place. So that's another thing, like we had seen that opportunity for years, hard to realize with the old ways of working, now like very much like at our fingertips. And then big picture in the product itself, that if for folks that use Zapier who are joining us today, you've probably noticed that the biggest difference in the product today compared to 3-4 years ago is that you can actually use an AI copilot to help you ideate on your next use case, and help you build it. It's a big deal, right? Zapier's mission, make automation work for everyone. And I remember when I joined, 4.5 years ago, it was, even back then known as like the most user-friendly way to automate work, period. And it was. It's a lot easier to use now, right? It's just remarkable. And so to your point, like opportunity expander, there are a lot of folks for whom PandaDoc can be for now. A lot, much broader audience, who Zapier can be for, in part because of AI. So I just loved how you talked us through that. Let us do a lightning round, and then we're gonna get it right into everyone's questions, because there were some great ones in here. Okay, here we go, Keith. Most overrated AI trend right now.
Ooh. I would say using AI for copy. I mean, we do it, of course, and I think everybody does it, but there's so many ways to tell that it's AI. And when I get pitched a lot, as I'm sure you do from a sales perspective, there is nothing that is more of a turnoff to me than when I can tell it's AI. Like, you didn't even put the effort to customize it and put it in your own language. That is a turnoff to me. So I would say that's a little bit overrated. Like, you've got to have some human element in there.
Yep. Well, hot off the presses, I think today it was announced that the word of the year from Merriam-Webster is slop. And what I'm hearing you say is slop. Maybe
Yeah.
a little less, AI slop in 2026, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. My answer would be like, it's kind of like AI for its own sake, and in ways that like actually like diminish customer experience. It's supposed to make it better. Right. Yeah, so like I don't love saying that. I think that'll get ironed out over time, but right now I think there's a little bit of shiny object syndrome at play. Keith, what is one AI project you would fund tomorrow with $100,000? You found $100,000 hanging out, hidden in the balance sheet, the PandaDoc. You want to deploy it. What would you use it for?
Yeah, I'm going to take a counter to one of the comments, which is a voice agent. We deployed a prototype voice agent, put it in our trial funnel to help our self-serve customers. We're seeing some really great results for it, but it's an MVP. So I would put more there. There's just customers who we can't serve at scale with a human. And there's questions you have, and sometimes it's hard to get those answered, and they want to speak on the phone. And so I would do a voice agent.
Yeah. Okay, that's super interesting. Let me share a thing, and if folks have questions about it, put it in the questions bank, and we'll see if we can get to it. So in recruiting, Zapier is now offering, as an option for candidates for certain jobs, the choice between interview. And this is the first live interview, not all interviews, just the first one. The opportunity to interview with a human recruiter or a AI agentic recruiter, just for the first screen. And I can actually share the data. If folks are interested, let me know in the questions, which percentage of candidates for those jobs have chosen the AI recruiter as opposed to the human recruiter. And we're doing that to get underneath exactly what you're talking about, Keith, which is like, I just think we'll be surprised. I don't know in which direction we're going to be surprised, but we're going to learn something. I couldn't tell you when it comes to, voice, like how it's going to break down and what folks are going to choose. But we think if we give folks the option, we'll learn something. So happy to share more about that if that's of interest. Keith, what's your favorite small AI win this year?
Let's see. We rolled out an enterprise search tool that has just been amazing for our sellers. I'm not going to say the name, but it's a tool that integrates where the sellers live, which is in Slack, and they're able to ask it any question about PandaDoc, our rules or regulations, and it will give them an answer. We rolled it out really quickly. It was one of those experiments. We were rolling out a bigger enterprise tool. We rolled this one out at the same time for just sales, and this one has dwarfed the larger enterprise usage. And so it's been really powerful for sellers to get answers than they ever could before.
That's really neat. Okay, what is my answer to this question? AI for coaching. The most surprising thing I've heard about AI for coaching. Now, by the way, I don't believe that AI can replace all forms of human coaching. It's just a tool. It's good for certain jobs, not all jobs. But the thing that really surprised me this year is in talking with some of our teammates at Zapier. It's like, hey, sometimes it's not just about AI coaching can be more less costly, more accessible. We can offer it to more people. They're like, that's great. But sometimes if my choice isn't between like a human coach or an AI coach, it's between like an AI coach, like not a human, and not talking to anything or anyone about it at all. And I was like, oh, geez, I hadn't thought about that way. We've been obsessing over like pros and cons of like AI coaching versus human coaching. Hadn't thought like the behavior pattern whereby like, yeah, I'm not going to talk to a human about this. So if you provide me like a confidential like AI powered coach, like I'm getting something useful that's gonna help me out relative to nothing at all. And so
I,
that was a bit of an unlock for me.
I'd go one step further, which is sometimes, coaches are expensive. You can start with your AI coach, get ready and prep for the time with your real coach.
Mhm.
Or even our HR team, like we have an amazing HR team here. They are incredible at coaching our team through challenges. And we prep for that by talking to AI or asking the AI, like, I don't know what questions I should ask HR to be ready for this. I always
Mhm.
think like, what questions should I ask is a great question to ask the AI. And you get really good answers back that then help you be ready for that next moment.
That's such a good tip. I love that. Okay, last lightning round. Then we're going to pivot it over. We'll have our teammate Ryan Anderson come out of the ether. He's got all the questions, and he'll pepper us with them for the back half of this Ask Me Anything. All right, last lightning round question. Keith, what's the AI tool that you use the most personally?
Yeah, I have been using Claude the most, just general purpose for anything. I use it for coaching. I ask it what questions to ask. I use it to give me instructions for other things. So I actually vibe coded an integration between PandaDoc and a partner when we were trying to spin up a new partnership really quick, and I had no idea how to do it. Like I had never used Replit before, so I asked Claude what instructions I should put into Replit, and it gave me this great set of answers. So I use it all the time for so many different things. And I think Claude Skills is really cool as well to be able to turn those like repeatable tasks into
Mm.
answers.
Okay. So aside from Zapier, which is maybe the obvious answer, here at Zapier, the one that I'm using the most right now is one of those AI note takers. I have it on for almost every conceivable meeting, and that's not really like the note taking piece isn't the superpower. The note taking piece is the like data foundation that it builds every time I do a meeting, right? It's like every time I do a meeting, it's added to my own personal confidential like data repository of all the meetings I have on this tool. And so it's like a coat of paint every meeting. And then I can query it. So for example, last week I queried it, said, hey, like for all the meetings I've done with like my peers at other companies, like just give me some coaching on how am I showing up in these meetings? Where does it seem like I'm adding value based on what folks are playing back to me? Also, just give me some feedback on my tone, my affect, my ratio of talk time. Like, just help me be a better peer to my peers when I'm meeting with them externally. And guess what? Doesn't really matter what AI model, what LLM is doing that crunching. The value is in the data layer, and because it has this ever growing record of how I'm showing up in all of these meetings, that feedback it's pretty good. In fact, it sticks you a little bit because you're like, oh, that is so right on, right? It's like but that's what makes it valuable. So that's been a big one for me this year.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Now,
love that meta angle. Like because you're interfacing with the tool so much, it's collecting all this data on you. And if you know to ask it about that collection or like what it's noticed about your interactions, it can produce these insights that maybe others have noticed about you, but maybe they didn't want to tell you. And so I think it's really effective for that.
yeah, right on. Okay, well, here we go. We still have 200 folks strong joining us for the back half today, and now we're going to pivot over to questions that folks have posted just in the 30 minutes or so that we've been talking so far. But first, want to welcome our very own Ryan Anderson from Zapier. He's going to moderate all this Q&A.
Hey, everybody. Really enjoyed y'all's conversation. So, Brandon and Keith, thanks so much. And the chat has been lively, which has been really, really fun. Questions are great. Recommend everyone to go in there and start upvoting. But I'm going to start with this one. I think this is a great one. It's one I've been thinking about quite a bit. I'm sure both of you have as well. How does the speed of change in the AI space impact our ability to build training that stays relevant for long enough to be valuable? How do y'all think about that, and teams, especially as we continually evaluate things like AI fluency?
Cool. All right.
I'm happy to give it a stab. I think you should be constantly evolving, and one of the really cool things about AI is that it can constantly update itself almost. And so what we're trying to do is use AI not just to create V1, but to constantly refresh V1. So V1 becomes V2, becomes V3. Like, you can ask it what should change in this training based on current trends in the last 3 months, and it will give you a really good answer. And so I think, again, like these meta prompts, like for me, the moment I figured out that you could ask it about itself was just like this light bulb going on.
Totally.
And so I think that's how we're starting to approach it.
Yeah. So first of all, Shane, awesome question to lead us off. And I think Keith's got the big idea here. What's different about AI as it relates to learning compared to, I think, any other technology that came before it? You can use it as your teacher, your coach, your tutor. When I get stuck building like an agent on Zapier, for example, I use the AI Copilot and I say, hey, I tested it. This particular thing didn't go like exactly. Here's what I'm observing. Here's how I'd like it to work instead. Like, help me think about how to reconfigure this or update the prompting to get the desired result. And it's right there. That's remarkable. You know, someone who used to be a teacher, used to work in education, like this is a big deal, what we're hearing from Keith. And so practically at Zapier, and again, this is, you know, even a couple of years ago now, we just sound like really provocative. We don't do a lot of, if any, like traditional L&D or training on prompting or what have you. We have banks of like, there are definitely things you can use, and like we have like some golden paths and what have you, but a lot of the like AI fluency work that we do is more in the vein of what we were hearing from Keith earlier, you know, around like how to think about what AI is for in the first place, like grounding folks in a really clear understanding of like our organization's mission, our strategy, what our success measures are, how their job and their work interfaces with all of that, what greatness looks like for them every day, and then saying, based on that, and then applying your own expertise and craft, like, where do you want to experiment here? Where do you think AI and automation can help? So yeah, Shane, thanks again for leading off with this one.
Yeah, and I'll add one little tidbit as well. I think there are some non-traditional models that are maybe less official, but I think, Brandon, you often say this, like AI as a technology challenges your organizational health. And I think one of the things that's really meaningful is how do you share information, or how do you share tips or best practices? And I think continuing to offer that space as people use and build on AI more and more is really valuable, because often I learn the next thing from just watching somebody else prompt, build something with AI, et cetera. And so how do you actually keep offering those spaces to your employees? Because just like you said, asking ChatGPT about itself can be really illuminating. You know, watching a coworker not try and get the right answer from AI, but have AI produce 3 options for you to review is then like a total unlock on how you prompt AI and how do you just continually give learning opportunities in that maybe less formal way as well. Well, nice. Like Brandon said, great question, Shane. Okay. This one is, I think, a question folks are really curious about. Is just some of the trends. Y'all spoke on trends a little bit that you don't buy. What about some trends around AI and automation where you're seeing just bigger opportunities in 2026? These can be skill-based, or these can be technology and tooling-based, whatever.
So I'm happy to go first again. I think, and not to suck up, but I think Zapier has done this really well. I would say putting AI where the workflow happens, where the work happens. If you can use a model for many different things, and it will produce really good results. But I think driving the best automation and the best stickiness is putting, like Brandon said, don't do AI for AI's sake. Putting the AI where it's actually going to help you complete your work is such a game changer. Like, I can do a lot of things with Claude, as I mentioned, But if I have to go and copy data from one place and paste it in, it's really a distraction. And then I have to go take the answer out and paste it somewhere else. So embedding it directly in the workflow saves my team, my people, me time, and is likely to produce better results over time if that data is connected. So right back to Brandon's example, the note taker, because it's always on, it's part of his workflow, it's creating this like second order level of value. It's not just summarizing a meeting and giving you the answers, it's giving you this metadata on top of it of like what Brandon is good at because it's part of your workflow. And so I think the trend is seeing it embedded in the workflow.
Eldrick, to your question, the thing I'm really optimistic we'll see in 2026, 2025, like a lot of interest in like companies saving time and money with AI. And by the way, that interest will definitely continue in 2026. But I think it's going to have some companions in 2026. And notably, I expect we'll see more organizations also looking to improve the quality of the work that they do with AI. Yeah, particularly in the form of like customer experience or end user experience. And again, that could be a customer of a product or a student, a citizen, if government's the organization, applying AI. Like I hope and expect we'll see a greater emphasis on quality right next to efficiency. And then last but not least, employee experience. And I think actually our next question from John is going to touch on this. Ryan was talking about, Zapier has a framework for AI impact, and we use this to like help us push our thinking on what the opportunity is when we're redesigning a way of working with AI. And it's a 3-part framework with one little caveat that Keith noted earlier. The 3-part framework is, yes, efficiency. So like, let's save some time and money where we can, but at least as importantly, quality. Let's improve the nature of the output. And 3, employee experience. If we're going to redesign the way of working, humans in a variety of ways are still going to be involved in that work. So while we're growing efficiency and quality, let's also make the experience of doing the work better for the people doing the work. So efficiency, quality, employee experience, that's the 3-part impact framework for Zapier. But there's a little thing underneath it, and Keith noted it earlier, maybe without even knowing that you were playing to the framework, which is sometimes it unlocks an entirely new opportunity. You start redesigning a way of working and you realize there's actually a bigger thing we can be playing for, a whole new range of stakeholders we can start serving, whereas before it was just impossible to do so, just as an example. So that I think has been really motivating. And I think we'll see organizations thinking bigger, like more ambitiously about what this impact ought to look like in 2026.
Totally. Well, that transitions into that question that you were just mentioning from John here, which is, there's a lot of talk about replacement, but I think augmentation is the one that is probably more realistic and common. And I think the answer is to what you said, Brandon, is about capacity. But any thoughts on reduced work week, or any deeper thoughts on actually this is an opportunity to deliver more radical customer value? I would put it, more opportunity to do more better things. But Keith, maybe I'll direct this to you.
Yeah, so when I was thinking about I think it's exactly what it's doing. It's allowing employees. I wouldn't say shortening work days or work weeks yet, maybe on the margin, but it is allowing you to spend less time on the drudgery or the boring work and focus on the work that you like and the work that has impact for your customers or your business. But having said that, if you read some of the AI luminaries out there. I mean, we said, I don't know if anybody's truly an expert yet, but there are certainly luminaries. They will say that this will fundamentally change the way society evolves. I don't know. I just don't know. And I don't know the time frame if that will happen. But I could see how it could be possible, because so many things that just took hours can now be compressed into minutes. And if you aggregate that across an entire society, there's a lot of value and a lot of time savings to be had. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I think there's still so many challenges with the quality today. Even if it's not like a major hallucination, there are small mistakes it makes that require quality checks that it may not completely shrink the work week yet.
And I would tell you the first, John, when I heard your question, I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know how many organizations are going to give all that time back to their employees and go from like 40 hours to 20 hours a week. At least in the foreseeable future. But I do think as leaders, Keith, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I personally feel accountable for making sure that AI does have that employee experience benefit. And that could look like a couple of things. It could look like, as sometimes someone will say really bluntly, like, make the work suck less, right? We all have parts of our job that are just absolute drudgery. And with AI, we have a pretty meaningful opportunity to abstract a bunch of it. So that's one thing. The other thing I hope AI will help with is a bit of a preventative for overwork. Do I think a lot of companies will take workers from 40 hours to 20 hours and what have you? It's like, no, I think if we go down to 20, like, we'll probably find 20 hours worth of even higher impact work that like helps the company be more successful, advances our mission, helps our stakeholders just like be better, and or whatever the case may be. So that's where I imagine that time will go. However, if there are other organizations where folks today are working 60 hours rather than 40 hours, like, yeah, maybe AI can help, right? Like trim some of that back to get a little bit more towards that like normative level of work per week. I think there's a lot of good research that shows that, overwork from a number of hours perspective actually isn't really a recipe for high performance anyway. And that's another place where I have some optimism.
Yeah, I feel that way. I like the way you put it, Keith, too, the drudgery of work, because a maddening amount of time and energy goes to that work, right? And I framed it as something I've talked with a few folks about, is like radical customer value. It's kind of like, we can remove some of that drudgery, then you do get to spend more time building for customers or talking and working with customers, and that promise becomes so much more real and rewarding, right, for work. Well, nice. Let's see. Here's our next one here. I like this one a lot. You talked a little bit about ROI. I think when it comes to any tool or maybe like a new workflow that you or the team is building against, how do y'all think about ROI? You can read the question here. How do you think about even just like starting to scope the actual measurement aspect and what performance might look like? Let's go to Keith first.
First, I think goes back to something Brandon said, which is like, you start with an understanding of your current business and what is your biggest bottleneck that is preventing you from achieving what you want to do. Now, that doesn't mean it's automatically like that's the biggest one is the first place you put AI. It might be the second one, because you've got to look at the feasibility of whether AI can solve that problem. But I would start by creating a list of all the things slowing down my business. And then I would start thinking about whether AI could apply to that. But then my second answer, which I think is even better, is I would ask an AI. I would say, these are the challenges facing my business. Where can I deploy you or another AI tool to have the highest leverage and the best ROI? And it's going to tell you, number one, like, which it would do, and then you can ask it how to do it, and it will tell you how to do it. And I think the combination of those two approaches will give you a better answer. Because if you just say in general, here's my business, how would you apply yourself to have the max ROI, it'll probably give you an okay answer. But if you say through like the top 5 things that are slowing my business down, which of these would be the highest leverage or best place to apply AI, it'll give you a really good answer for that.
I love that. What about you, Brandon?
I think the best paths to choosing like the best tools or, prioritizing workflows is to start with the things that your business already really cares about. It's like, hey, it could be, hey, we're trying to serve a new type of customer that has a different willingness to pay, like a lower willingness to pay. And like our current way of serving customers, like we can't economically serve this new type of customer. So how might we? Right. So that's a really neat like business problem. And you ask like, how might, AI and automation help there? You start with these like big, durable business problems. It really helps the organization maintain focus, because that's one thing we haven't talked about as much today, Keith, which I think is one of the biggest blockers for all of our organizations going into 2026, is just maintaining focus on this type of experimentation when, all of our organizations, we have a lot of business as usual work going on, right? There's a lot of stuff to do. And so one of the best antidotes to like the focus whiplash is, we anchor the experimentation on things that just matter. We know they matter. They're super anchored on strategy, what we're trying to be great at in the world. Then that helps us, kind of stay on the straight and narrow and make sure that we actually reap the learnings from that experimentation. And I would say the second and last thing that this question made me think about is, and as my mother, taught me when I was young, sometimes, if not a lot of the time, you got to spend money to make money. It's like, what does that mean? I don't know if I still totally know what that means, but I think it reminded me of this because, uh, Keith was saying at PandaDoc, for example, they have a healthy appetite for upfront investment here, knowing that some experiments are going to work and pay off famously, many will not, but overall, in aggregate, right, the way that I hear Keith, you and the team approaching this is you're going to have some meaningful winners here in terms of like influence on the business and your customers. But in the meantime, I think a trap for this is, I think for a lot of our organizations, we're going to be spending some money up front. We're not going to see the rewards immediately. And so there's going to be a time where you look at like ROI as a time horizon game. If I look at some of the stuff we've invested in at Zapier today, Ryan, and you can probably say the same on our marketing team, for example, if we were to do the ROI measurement today on some of these early experiments, it's probably negative. It's probably negative. And if we let that cause us to stop or conclude that it didn't work, we might be missing the big picture. So I think when we're talking about ROI, one of the most important things we need to do is agree on the time horizon. Are we interested in like next 3 months or next 3 years, for example?
Totally. And I think like it depends on what investments and how you want to get there. I think what's so interesting, Brandon, is like you have developed and actually moved headcount over to have an AI automation engineer embedded in the talent team at Zapier. And Emily's charter is, you could explain it better than me, but some part of her charter is moonshots to help the talent org. And she's dedicated to that and doesn't have other operational work like pulling her away. So in terms of discovering what the ROI is, you can actually kind of box it into what can Emily go find out and learn in some given time horizon, like you said. And that actually cleans up the ROI conversation that can be kind of amorphous, nebulous, unsure, and you just dedicate it to one person. Can they go move the needle on their own, right? Nice. We've got 8 minutes left. Let's do a couple more. I really like this question from Michael here. We talked about fluency. I think we've talked about skills and capabilities. I think here Michael is referencing how do we measure curiosity in the interview process, but I'd be curious also from both of you how you think about that across your teams, even how do you evaluate curiosity in this moment? What are you looking for? What signals are you hoping for? Brandon, maybe I'll start with you and then we'll go to Keith.
Sure. In the interview process, we'll typically ask folks to share an example of how they have or have attempted to use AI to improve their daily work. And in that question, we're peeling back the onion on a lot of the things we're looking for when it comes to AI fluency, and curiosity is one of them. So when I'm asking a candidate about an example like this, I'm curious about like, how did you decide that was something worth experimenting with? um, how did you develop a point of view on like the shape of that problem or opportunity? And there I'm looking for like, is that vibes? Did you do some research? Did you talk to some people, and so on? I'll also ask after like, what signals were you looking for? And like, how did you collect them? So like, are you getting kind of like feedback on how it's going and what have you? I'll often ask, you know, whether you got it or not, like if there was a counter argument to your theory of the case on this new way of working or how using AI, like what would it be and how would you respond to it? And so, that's not all just curiosity, by the way. That's, there's critical thinking embedded in that. There's coachability in that, but there's also signal on curiosity as well. And so when we're interviewing folks, and this isn't just related to AI fluency, we really coach our interviewers to focus on like just a few powerful questions where you can go really deep and get evidence on a variety of the qualities that we're looking for.
Keith, what about you?
I think there's two ways. One kind of similar to what Brandon said, but where I've seen mistakes in interviews, just asking a question, getting an answer, moving to the next question. I like to probe a little bit more with follow-up questions. And I think in those follow-up questions, you can dig a little bit deeper to see the why and try to uncover whether there's curiosity there. Like one question might be, tell me about an analysis that you did that uncovered, efficiencies in a company for like an ops role.
Right.
you could say, well, how did you get to that hypothesis? Or like, how did you decide that was the area, right? And then you're getting at like, well, my boss told me, okay, well, that's not very curious, versus, oh, I noticed this thing in the data and then I decided to like look deeper. And so you can sort of peel apart what is an intrinsic motivator through those questions. And then I always leave time at the end, like ample time to ask me questions.
Mhm.
You see, are they stock questions? Are they just like the normal questions? Like, what's the culture like?
Right.
Or is it, oh, I'm really interested. I took the time to look at your website. Like the people who go that extra mile, I think indicates often some curiosity. And I'm trying to figure out how curious they are by like what questions they're asking, and do they do the same thing to me? Like when I give them an answer, do they ask a follow-up question, or they just jump to a next question?
Yep.
Follow-up question indicates like their brain is thinking through it and want to know what is behind my answer.
Totally. I love that. I was talking to a leader the other day. They're based here in San Francisco. And one of the ways that they go about this in interviews is this isn't the end all be all in an interview. It's just signal for this person. But they asked candidate, have you ever been in a Waymo? And there's Waymos driving all over the place in San Francisco. They're very easy to catch here. For those that don't know, these are autonomous cars, and you can ride them like Uber or Lyft or anything like that. And if a candidate says no, it's just signal that maybe this candidate isn't interested in trying new things that are available. And so it's just a little bit of signal, but I do think it taps into this little bit of curiosity. Like, it's hard not to be curious about autonomous cars in San Francisco when they're driving around all the time. And it's just kind of an interesting way of approaching it in a real world kind of way. Well, I love those answers. We got 4 minutes left. Let's do one question here from the chat that I really liked from Joseph. I'm going to read it aloud because I can't push it to the screen. Any sneak peek or just a new innovative North Star objective or initiative that Zapier or PandaDoc are honing in, focusing on in 2026? Brandon, I'll start with you because I know two off the top of my head that are our big bets, but I'll let you answer and however you want.
Yeah, our heads are going to a similar place. So I'll actually share two quick answers. One is in the product. So if you're a user of Zapier, expect to see in 2026 like even more power in our co-piloting, like the ability to use AI to both ideate on like the next place, AI and automation can help with the, using the applications and the problems that you're trying to solve. And that same co-pilot can even more powerfully help you build a workflow that helps you have more impact in that area. So that's on the product as it faces all of us that use things like Zapier. Inside the company, Zapier, as Ryan was sharing, we have two company-wide AI transformation bets for 2026. These are things that, as our founder CEO Wade would say, would change the color of the sky, Zapier orange, if they were successful. And one of them is called the Zapier Digital Twin. And this would be basically a kind of a AI co-pilot that's tuned to the knowledge, the expertise, and the data, structured and unstructured, for effectively every type of work in the company, such that no matter what you're doing at Zapier, again, as a engineer, a product marketer, a designer, you have effectively a digital twin who can augment your work and help you be amazing. So that's a big swing. I will tell you, I don't know exactly how we're going to do that yet, but we're really curious to figure it out because the impact would be huge. Keith, what's your answer to that question?
So one of our co-founders, Sergey, has a great paradigm that he's using for the deployment of AI. And we think about high frequency tasks, meaning they are used by many users and they're used by those users a lot. And then we pair that with high friction. So they're used a lot, but they're kind of painful. And so in PandaDoc, a good example of this would be you have tons of agreements, you got to organize them. How many of you guys have really messy folder structures, whether it's in your Google Drive or somewhere else you can't find a document? We're using AI. We see people organizing their agreements all the time to simplify that agreement, make it much easier. Search would be another one. How often is search just really bad, even in something as amazing as Google Drive?
Right.
High frequency, but high friction. You can't get the answer you want. So we're working to automate those. And that is one of the biggest paradigms we're using on how we deploy it for our customers.
Cool. I love those. Well, those were great ones to end on. Hopefully they get folks' wheels turning. Brandon, we got a minute left, so I'm going to go off screen and I'll let you two sign us off. Thanks, everybody.
That sounds good. Well, and thanks for everyone who joined today. These questions really drove the conversation, got me thinking in some fresh ways about this topic of AI transformation and especially AI fluency. Keith, super grateful for you. The work that you and the PandaDoc team are doing is, to put from early, like I appreciate maybe no experts at this point or the foreseeable future, but there are definitely companies that are earnestly getting after this, and PandaDoc is absolutely one of them. So it's really neat to jam with you today.
Yeah, same. I loved it and honored to be a part of this. And you guys are really setting a high standard. So excited to be chosen to host with you and love the questions. Thank you.
Totally. All right. Well, again, for folks that joined a couple minutes after we started, this will be recorded. We'll make sure you get a recap of everything we talked about today and the recording. Thanks again for joining. We'll do more of these in the future. It's a great way for all of us to learn together. Have a great day.